Do
Yep,
it.
and you did the tab. I figured it out.
Perfect. And once again, we are live. It is another beautiful Friday morning here for me, afternoon for our guest and some of our listeners. And who knows, it could be nighttime because the world is round, despite what a lot of people think. This is Maker That Money, the podcast, where we talk about turning your hobby into your jobby. I am one of your hosts, Pooch of Repkord. With me, as always, my trusty partner in crime, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop. Andrew, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, sir. I'm good. How
And
are you?
I am fantastic, and I'm super pumped for this episode. Our guest today, frankly, needs no introduction. She's amazing on all levels. But we have Ellie Rose with us, founder and
That's
owner.
me.
That's you, founder and owner of CocoaPress. And Ellie, we are so happy to finally have you on here so we can talk about making the sweetest 3D printers in all of the land. But we'll get into that. First of all, let's do the introductions. How are you? Why don't you give everybody the elevator pitch of who you are and what CocoaPress is?
Yeah, I'm Ellie, like he said, founder of CocoaPress. CocoaPress is a 3D printer that prints chocolate. So
Chocolate.
I've been working on it for a little over 8 years now, actually.
8.
And it
Wow.
started off as a hobby, and
And
it
now it's
turned
your
into my
jobby.
hobby, like
Yes.
you said.
There we go.
It
Yeah.
took a lot of forms. It was school projects in various schools, and then has been my full-time thing for about 4 years now.
Awesome.
That's
What a
awesome.
wild ride I am sure it
Yeah.
has been.
And
Uh
then it's a good time to be talking because just about 2 weeks ago is when we launched the newest printer. And it's kind of like the first one to be fully available to,
the,
you know,
the
not
retail
just bigger
masses.
businesses. So
Yeah.
it's kind of a really
Nice.
exciting time for me right now.
It's so exciting. We both got to see it in person live at I don't know if you would you call it your official launch party or whatever, because this has been
Yeah.
a while in the works, but at the Rocky Mountain Rep Festival, and it is such a beautiful machine. It's a great machine. I know you've put so much sweat and tears into it, and I know you've had some help from the maker, the founder of the Voron community was very involved in it, and maybe you can tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did it come into its current form?
Yeah. So we had a previous version of the printer that we sold in. We launched it in late 2020. Great time to launch a hardware product. And
Any
it
product,
didn't
yeah.
didn't go super well for various reasons, but we do have a few of them out there. And we were looking for what should we do next? What can we do to yeah, just continue this because I still thought 3D chocolate printing is going to be there. It just maybe needs to be proven before a shop is willing to spend. It was at the time $10,000 on a machine.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
So we started looking at what instead of making the entire printer ourselves, how can we work with kind of the open source nature of the 3D printing community? How can we work with what exists already so we're not reinventing the wheel?
Sure.
And just
Mhm.
started looking at all of the possibilities for printers out there. And we started prototyping. I have printed chocolate on a Prusa. I've worked with another 3D printing manufacturer to try to see if we could put it on theirs. I've looked into putting it on Lulzbot printers. And then it's like, but the Voron V0 is so cute. It's so small. I love it. So we bought a couple of Voron kits, threw a chocolate extruder on there, had to do some crazy hacks to get it to work. I mean, we were running 2 different electronics boards. We were running,
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I put a hole in the bottom so you could actually get the chocolate cartridge into the printer because we have a bottom loading cartridge system.
Okay.
And brought it to Murph
Yeah.
in 2022. And
Mhm.
that was kind of the first time that the Voron team had assembled at one of these conferences. So long story short, RCF, the founder of the Voron project, saw it and was like, let's make this, but good. And that's what we
Well,
did.
you're
And
like,
so
is that an insult or yeah,
no,
yeah,
no, no.
yeah.
It was such a thrown together prototype.
Yeah, yeah.
We rushed to try to bring it to the show. It's always this balance of, do I talk about what we're working on before we launch it,
Uh-huh.
or do I try to keep it a secret before we launch it, or do I just say, hey, this is what I'm doing, let's see what happened? And in this case, I decided to say, hey, this is what we're doing, let's see it happen.
And both are
That
perfectly
really worked
valid
out for us.
valid strategies. Well,
Yeah.
okay, so that's a fantastic teaser. I'm gonna pause you right there for a second because we do have to do our regularly scheduled thing, and we're gonna put you on the spot. I didn't warn you about this ahead of time because I love to do this to people because I'm a jerk. But we love to share at the top of the show our wins for the week. So what Andrew knows is coming because he always has it. So I always put him on the spot first. So it gives you at least a few seconds to think about something that's good to have. It doesn't have to be business related. It can be in your personal life. It can be anything. You could have just seen an act of kindness on the street walking around and that just made your day. You can share that. That's totally fine too. But to start with wins for the week, Mr. Andrew Mayhall of 3D Gloop,
Oh boy.
tell us how you're winning because we love the positivity here.
All right. I think one of the biggest wins probably this week, just getting organization down for the upcoming shows for the rest of the year. Putting a lot of effort into planning. We got accepted into a pretty major show coming up here, so we're
Teasers.
trying to make it all happen.
Yeah.
On the back end.
That's awesome.
So,
that's good.
Yep.
It's getting into travel season. I was gonna riff off of that as well, but that very good. Well, good win on that. Ellie, what is something good that happened to you this week?
See, I had something when Andrew started talking, but I was so intrigued on what you were talking about that I forgot it. A couple of little good things is I got back from a trip. I was gone all of last week, and I was able to catch up on a whole bunch of emails and DMs and other crazy things, and that always just makes me feel really good to
that is the best.
see that zero. The
Yeah, inbox zero.
Are you an
Yes.
inbox zero? Are you an inbox zero person?
No. But I'm at inbox
okay.
like 6.
Inbox 6 is pretty good.
It's better than me.
I'm in inbox 177 right now.
Yeah. Mine's around 36.
Yeah. Half of it's junk though.
I've been there.
Yeah.
I was at about 180 last week, so it was mostly junk. But I think my biggest CocoaPress related win is Joel Telling, 3D Printing Nerd, put out a video, an interview, which was kind of like one of those crazy things of, Joel and I are friends at this point.
Sure.
But I was watching him on YouTube well before I knew him. And it's just kind of crazy to think back at earlier in this project and be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be on that YouTube channel one day. And it's just going to be like a Wednesday. It's like, and we had the third best day of printer reservations.
Wow.
So it just,
That's awesome.
People watched it, and the 3D printing nerd effect is real.
It's super real.
Yeah.
The Joel effect, as we call it. He's just such a powerful energy for the community, and I've been friends with him for a long time too, and it's so great talking to him. And I like when I first got started, it's like there's this feeling of celebrity to some extent. I'm like, oh my god, I'm on with Joel, and that's so cool. I can relate. That feels great.
And now we just text. It's like, oh,
yeah,
hey, Joel.
That is a fantastic win, Ellie, and I'm happy to hear it. And I hope you're feeling a little bit refreshed. I know you said you're coming off of a family vacation, and I know that can be a both relaxing and a stressful experience for some people. So you just never know what you're going to get there. But yeah, family time is important, and as a founder, especially, we do not tend to reserve enough time for downtime often. So.
Yep.
So I hope that was a good experience for you. Were you? Can you say where you were and how long you were gone for?
Yeah, I was in Israel for a week, and I was there with my 94-year-old grandfather.
Oh my!
And
wow.
It was a it was amazing that the trip ended up happening. We actually almost canceled the trip about 4 days before we went because he was in the hospital.
Oh.
His health is declining pretty quickly, and he's been saying for years that he just wants to go back to Israel for this World Union for Progressive Judaism conference that was happening while we were there.
Okay.
And it happened, and he was better than I've seen him in years, just more engaged and amazing. And so it's always hard to watch people age and all of that, but it was really, really incredible to be there for him.
That's fantastic. That's great.
Yeah,
I'm glad
yeah.
you got to do that. For my win for the week, I'm gonna kind of go in the similar vein from what Andrew was saying, and there's been a lot of travel lately, and that is, we talk about vacation. A lot of these events that we go do, are very very energizing for me, being the extrovert that I am. And the fact that I derive so much energy clearly from just being around other people, makes me realize how important it is that I go to these things. And I wasn't planning to go to all of them, but Mr. Joel Telling twisted my arm and was gracious enough to host me for Rapid, which was one of the most recent trips I came back from, which was awesome. Got to see a lot of great people at that. That was in Chicago this year, and then just before that we had Rocky Mountain, and then I was just at the Prusa user group meetup, which was fantastic. It was sold out. There were a ton of great people. They were all kind of semi-local to me in the San Francisco Bay Area, and then they just had one in Seattle last night, which I really wanted to go to as well, but budget, can't do them all, sadly, and time. But that was such a great meetup, and I got a chance to talk with Joe Prusa ahead of the show. We actually did an impromptu recording. It was frantic. It was in true Prusa fashion, very last minute cobbled together, but it came together. I'm going to drop that recording after this one, so that'll be out this week as well. And thankfully, the audio came out a lot better than I thought. I literally had limited gear. I tore my entire audio setup apart, got the Rodecaster, and just said I'll record straight to the little SD card, with very little idea of how the quality was going to be, if we were going to even have a quiet space to do it. But it was really rad to get to talk to a founder that's like 10 years ahead of where we are, and just kind of a look of like where this can actually go. And I really wish I had like 10 times as long, because I had a million questions, and we had unfortunately only like 20 minutes before the user group had to start. But it was a cool event. If you guys have the opportunity to go to one in the future, I know he's really gung-ho about doing more of these, especially given the state of feedback that we see online. And he's like, just getting out and seeing people in person and talking to them. Same thing with these events and these maker fairs. Like, it's just a different experience, and it keeps you, happier and positive in a way that you just don't get from the online interaction. Sadly, just takes a few bad apples to bring everybody down sometimes online. So the face-to-face seems to be the way to go. And Joe's really eager to invest more in that. So that's big wins on multiple fronts.
Awesome.
I feel. I don't know. What do you guys feel is on the events? Like, do you come back feeling like gung ho and energized and inspired on those, or are they draining, or a little of both?
For me, it's definitely inspiring. I'm eager to go to the next one. But I think for me, it's the lead up to the event.
Okay.
That's the exciting part.
The prep. I would disagree. That's the stressful part for me.
Yeah.
What do you think, Ellie?
Yeah.
That's
Well,
what I was gonna say, the lead up is the stressful part, when I'm just like, I like making the chocolate samples, because I could just listen to podcasts and kind of ignore everything and just be like, I'm not going to touch my computer all day today.
Yeah.
But it's the rest of it is stressful. I'm definitely re-energized by the events. I think Murph last year was kind of life-changing in a lot of ways. I met people that ended up helping me connect with the BattleBots team and got on the TV show BattleBots, which was kind of a lifelong dream. And
incredible.
Met RCF and worked on this new printer that is better than my wildest dreams for how this printer would turn out.
Yeah.
And also just met some friends that I stay in contact with pretty regularly. So that was pretty incredible. And then our Murph this year was also a ton of fun. So
oh my gosh,
I'm excited.
They're always so great. I mean, I love it. These are our people, And you know, I love maker disciplines of all different kinds. I've been really enjoying going to more of the cons and more of the, you know, branching out, because like the hobby of 3D printing, or the I mean, to even call it a hobby is weird. A lot of people treat it as a hobby, but obviously additive manufacturing, you know, is a thing. And so going on to the business side and going to shows that are more industrial in nature is a different experience, and you interact with different crowds and stuff like that. But it's such a it's a tool. A 3D printer is a tool unlike any other that I've come across. And I don't know, you guys feel in terms of like what it seems like it has enabled, um with just these little subsets and sub pockets, you know, of hobbies and whatnot, that are associated with it, right? Whether it's like the Lego community or the cosplay community or the, you know, RC and BattleBot. I mean, like, it's funny, nobody talks about like the drill press community, the bandsaw community, you know, what all these other tools that we use to make these things. But there's something about 3D printing where it just kind of coalesces around the medium in a way that's different. I don't know.
I think it's because the nature of 3D printing, it can be so much to so many different people.
Yeah.
You know, whereas like, you know, traditionally tools are designed to serve a single purpose. You know, a hammer, a screwdriver, a drill press, you know, whereas a 3D printer can be so much more than just a single tool, you know. And I think that that's what gets people excited, and it kind of sparks that whole creativity piece of our brains of like, hey, there's so many other things that I can do, and it solves this problem that I've been experiencing.
Yeah.
So
what do you think, Ellie?
Well, I'm just thinking about it. What, not to be philosophical, but like,
no,
what
let's
is
get
a tool?
let's get philosophical.
Because like a computer is a tool, and there's definitely many communities around computers and stuff.
That's a good point.
So I kind of think Andrew's right about just the fact that it's can be used for so many different things. Although I will say, I don't know if I'm supposed to break the fourth wall and
do
talk
it.
about the
Look, but you have to look us dead in the eye when you do it. She's just staring into the camera for people listening back.
Says, you know, I see you've never been in a table saw community, so maybe those communities do exist and we just don't know about them.
Maybe,
table saw owners, local. You know, that'd be funny.
I will say on the table saws, you know, you have the those in the camp of the saw stop and those in the camp of the old industrial, you know.
Listen, you got to keep your hot dogs safe, okay?
Yeah, exactly.
I love saw stops.
Can I tell you? Can I go on a side tangent for half a second?
That's what we do. Rabbit hole.
Okay.
Go.
My biggest regret of my biggest purchase regret for CocoaPress was a portable table saw. And I'm scared to use it because it doesn't have saw stop. There's no saw stop train. It was a long story short. For the first version of the printer, we were cutting a lot of insulation because we had double paned argon-filled glass and insulated walls and a whole enclosed cooling system.
Yeah,
it was an expensive machine.
Yeah,
and we were looking at getting dies made for some of the foam, and it ended up being like, you know, way cheaper to buy this table saw. And I learned sometimes don't scale until you have to. You know, sometimes it's good to prepare. Anyway.
Oh my gosh. We could do a complete episode on just that, right? Like the when to scale. And I don't even know what I don't know that there is a right answer to that, because there's definitely different strategies. Andrew and I have talked about this like ad infinitum.
Yes.
It's
no end.
It's a beefy topic, but I'm glad you brought it up. And that's not really that's a great business topic to jump in on. We don't have to go too deep on it right now, but I would stay with that for a second with you, Ellie, and say, what other lessons like that do you feel like you've learned? So first of all, let's pause. How many years have you been officially in business? Like, are you an LLC? What's the business structure? When did that all start? And then go start with that.
So I created the LLC, I don't know, maybe March-ish of 2019.
Okay.
It was about 3 or 4 months before I graduated college.
Okay.
And so it was kind of when I said, okay, I'm definitely doing this full time.
Yeah.
I have help from entrepreneurship professors. I was in an engineering entrepreneurship lab class.
Okay.
Where basically you use your own startup as the thing in the class. And it
That's
was
awesome.
one of the coolest classes I've ever taken. It was
That's
3 hours once a week,
man, I
and
wish
we
I had a
just
class
would
like that.
say, we would have like scheduled things too, but they were just like, hey, what'd you do in your startup this week? Oh, you're trying to do a customer survey. We're going to spend an hour and we're going to go through exactly how you write a good customer survey thing, and everyone's going to give details. So it was a really cool way of seeing about 6 startups growing in real time, people who have been working on
That's
it,
awesome.
people at various phases. And I don't know if anyone else from my year is still
I was gonna ask, are you still in
going.
touch, and
Mhm.
are do people
With
still?
some people,
Yeah.
yeah. I think one of them is still kind of doing it on the side, but other years of the classes, they've like raised VC money. Like I was scrolling through Twitter and I'm like, that's like Strella, they're on an Intel ad. Like, what is going on here? And then I ran into
Wow.
her, a month later. And
Wow.
so it's very cool to kind of see what's come of this class. That's how I started about 4 years ago. I
Okay.
don't remember the rest of your question.
No,
Tell me.
that was I
That was it,
decided instead
yeah.
of giving you the 5-part question the way I always do, I've grown a little bit, and I've said I'm going to start with that, and then we'll go on. So the reason that I wanted to get some background on it is then now if we're going to talk about don't scale before it's time, that means a totally different thing to a lot of people depending on what the structure of your business is. If you're venture funded, if you have cash that you need to get this thing scaled and off the ground because your funders at some point are going to want an exit and stuff like that. That's different than bootstrapping. So you're bootstrapped, if I'm not mistaken, right? We love bootstrapping here, meaning like we use our own seed funding to start things off, or
And
maybe
some grants and stuff as well.
yeah.
But yeah.
And so you have to be a lot more stingy with how you allocate your cash, because cash flow is everything in this, right? Like that's the lifeblood. And it is zero sum, unfortunately, to some extent. If you're spending money on something in column A, you have less available for column B or column, C. And so when you talk about scaling when the time is right, what are the indicators for you? And is it just a matter of the lessons you've learned in the past? Or how are you kind of trying to make those decisions about when it's time? Are you very budget centric? What are your strategies?
So I've gone through multiple phases before. There were There were 4 of us full time at one point, and
Oh, wow.
that was really cool, and that was a really cool experience. And learning how to manage people. One person was at a co-op in school, and the other 2 people had graduated. One of them had a master's.
Yeah.
So it was like very different skill ranges and skill sets. That being said, I think that was one of those times where I grew almost too quickly, too fast before I was sure I would have revenue. So this time, everyone kind of went and scattered into different things. I talk about Amy sometimes because she did a lot of material science work for me and is absolutely incredible. Got a job at Form Labs and is working on really cool stuff there. But this time I've started saying, okay, can I work that I can't do myself? Can I outsource it to contractors so that it's a little bit more, or like small businesses or whatever it is? So I think the best example of that recently has been Emma, who I know was on your podcast previously of Evergreen Support.
Love Emma.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she does all of my support now, or her and Ellis and
Awesome.
their new hire. And it has been incredible working with them.
They're so good.
Do they do work with you?
No, well, I've worked with her on a couple of other projects and stuff as well, but like just how organized she is and her mindset, like she's just a very common sense individual. We'll have to have her back on to do some follow up, because I know that like they've seen a lot of growth just in the coming years. Found a great niche. Identified that a lot of companies are like, support is like the last thing we feel like we have time for, but a lot of the assumptions I made, I don't know about for you, Ellie, but I was just like, well, people want, I wanted to offer that hands-on experience. A lot of times people wanted to be able to I wanted to interact with a customer. And when you're new and when you're growing, that's great because it's a good way to get feedback and understand like the pulse. But it can become very stressful and very limiting on your growth as you get bigger and bigger, right? You have to let go of that piece. So that's a great example.
It's really hard. And, it would weigh on me a lot when it took me 8-10 days to get back to someone, and now everyone's getting responses within
Sure.
like 2 days, and I can already see some people who are asking questions, and now they're placing printer reservations, and
Yeah.
that's really cool to see.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
One other example I think I would give is, and I think we're going to get into this a little bit more later,
Mhm.
but the way I've decided to kind of launch this new printer
Mhm.
with, instead of like a full pre-order campaign, just having $100 down so that people can reserve a printer, it's just so that I know how many printers I'm going to sell and be able to budget for the future, so that I don't hire too early this time. And I actually just made the decision this week that I am going to be hiring someone.
That's
Good.
awesome.
Good.
Soon, so
Good.
I'll be looking for people. But then that's just a really exciting thing because sales have gone really well.
That's
So,
fantastic. And I love how you put that. Like, don't hire too
Mm-hmm.
early. I think it all comes back to it's like, don't spend until you have to. Because I think we make these assumptions. And when you get, especially if you interact, I know you're on social media a lot, like, we are as well, because, we're social animals. And you start to see what's going on. And I think there's a lot of things where you can get wrapped up in the hype where it's like, oh, I got to spend some money on this. I got to do this. I have to hire. I have to get the big space. There's like the glamour component to it
Yep.
that you really have to resist, because people want to show, put best foot forward and represent their company in a positive
so
light.
hard. It's just like
It's
people are
hard.
emailing me from every country. I have like a spreadsheet of just like all the countries that people are emailing
Yeah.
me from to buy it.
Yeah.
And I'm just being like, I don't hear you. I don't hear you. You get added to the sheet. But
Yeah.
I am starting with the
Yeah.
US and Canada because I have to start somewhere. If I try to do everything, no one will
Yep.
have printers.
Oh my gosh, I'm so
Yeah.
glad you said that, because like I struggle. I
Yep.
think we all struggle with that. Andrew probably struggles with it too. Like we want, and that I think is, we read about this in various. This is not a new revelation, but it's it's the what you say no to, not what you say yes to, that will dictate your long term success, right? I don't know if it was Jobs
Yep.
or Jobs was just known for saying it. A lot of people have said it, but that is so true. And as people pleasers, I don't know if I can't speak for you guys, but like I have historically been a pleaser, right? So it's like I want to be able to say yes to people. And I don't feel like I have that same cutthroat mentality where a lot of people will associate, oh, that guy's a jerk, because it's such an art to be able to say no with a smile. No, we're not doing that right now. Thank you for the feedback. That's a great idea. We look forward to doing that in the future. There's a million different ways, and you get that experience as you go. But like that is so important. And Ellie, like that is great to hear that you recognize that, because I think this is a massive pitfall for a lot of people that are getting started. They say yes to too many things too quickly, right? What do you think on that, Andrew? Do you concur,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, as some of the longtime viewers and listeners of this podcast know, 3D Gloop is not my first startup. I had a previous one, and that one we were venture backed. We had private equity. We had lots of money. Raising $2.5 million, and at one point in time, the height of it, we were like 15 something people. So there's absolutely something to be said for learning to say no. I mean, early on, I had a hard time saying no to all of the other cool ideas or routes that we can go down, or use cases of our particular product or invention. And it was also hard because I had other people who I looked at who knew more than me telling me, hey, we got to go do this. So I wish, if there were things that I could do better, in the past, it would be learning to say no with a smile and say in time.
Yeah.
So with that said, I was actually curious if Ellie could shine a little bit of light on the early days at CocoaPress. And you mentioned that you had like 4 individuals working with you. Like could you tell us like what it was like having the idea and then growing that and then getting 4 people? Were these just people you knew who wanted to help? Like, I'm curious.
Yeah. So I graduated from college in 2019 and started working on CocoaPress full time right away, which was really cool. And then I got like a couple of grants from Penn, I went to University of Pennsylvania. So I got into their innovation accelerator. I'm still based out of the like Penn innovation space. I had free space for most of the year. It was pretty incredible. Um, and it was just me first in a this is back when WeWork was big, co-working spaces. So I was just upstairs in the co-working space. And then as I got more and more hardware, it was like, hey Ellie, you're kind of blocking the path here. It's like, can I have the conference room? So we said, okay, I got the conference room, but everything I had to be on the cart. So that if anyone needed to use the conference room, I could just cart all of my stuff out of the conference room.
You just took over the space.
Oh, I just took over.
I love it. Okay.
I like walking through the buildings now because I can just be like, I was in that space. I was in that space. I was in that space. I went into a construction area at one point. They're like, hey, we don't have anyone moving into this space for 6 months. And actually another pen startup is in there now, which is really cool.
So really quick, along those lines, you went straight from college into this. Have you ever had another job? I mean, you probably had jobs prior to college and stuff like that, but were you doing a day job at some point as well?
In school, I worked at the laser cutting lab, the rapid prototyping lab. I worked in the additive manufacturing lab. I was kind of like the student lead there.
Okay.
So I got to work with, Projet, Objet, Fortis printers.
Oh, nice.
And that's nice because I've been able to say, okay, I see what a $100 printer does, and I see what a $250,000 printer does.
Yeah.
And then I also had some, summer things. I was working at a design firm. If you ever want to know things about like napkins and toilet paper dispensers, I know way too much about them.
What?
But no, this is my first full-time job.
Wow.
Wow.
I think that's a first for us. That's unique. That's really interesting. So you're coming really straight out of school, your first career being your entrepreneurial venture. You've obviously had a lot of experience, and you bring up an interesting point too, Andrew. I know you've dealt with this too. That when you're doing competitions and you get grant funding and stuff like that, that can make a big difference, and it creates a community and even an environment of mentorship and stuff like that. That I know I always wish I had that. I didn't. So I think you have a really great leg up, but it's interesting because experientially, do you feel like you've missed out in terms of like, well, you haven't necessarily gone and like worked for another company to understand the mechanics of that, like in terms of real world experience?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that was one of the things that led me to hire some people in the beginning was, I want to hire this person who worked at X company. But it is really just about realizing, I have internships at a couple of, part-time jobs under my belt.
Yeah.
But realizing I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know what I'm doing. And just trying to get advice from all of the different people. Just constantly asking for advice about things.
I'm glad. I've
had more formal advisors at times, and I've also just had a lot of informal advisors.
I'm really glad that you recognize that, and I think your approach is good. I think you're a very humble individual. You're very. I mean, it's really interesting to me because I interact with a number of people in this community. Some much older than me, some way younger, and I lose a sense of like where people kind of are in their journey. Andrew's a pretty young individual, as well, and so it's like I say, you young bucks. What that experience is like as a very young founder with that experience, and what that what the teachings and what the lessons are there. I think that's really great that you recognize you're like, I need to surround there's a lot I don't know. I need to surround myself with smart people as best I can. I know it's really challenging if like you don't have money to hire people. You have to go out and find ways to get that mentorship and advice elsewhere.
And that was what was really great about the Pennovation Accelerator that I was in, and some of the early advisors I had. It's also interesting to have people helping you and try to understand where they're coming from. So one of my early advisors was head of business. I forget exactly what his title was, but it was someone very high up at Hershey. And he was very cognizant of the fact that this is coming from a Fortune 500 company lens. This is not what you should do.
Right.
But it was fascinating to hear some of the ways that he was thinking about the chocolate industry. And I actually got a lot of inspiration from some of what he was talking about in terms of market trends towards personalization. But it was not quite as useful day-to-day advice where there was a startup across the hall from me, Levy, that has since gotten purchased by 3D Systems.
Ooh,
And
wow.
the CEO, we used to meet at least once a month.
Okay.
Before the pandemic, we would just run into each other in the hallways, and he'd be like, "So Ellie, how are you making money these days? Like, when you sales? When are you gonna start going?"
Yeah, yeah.
I'm getting there.
Yeah.
And then during the pandemic, you have to schedule time more, so it became that. But so it's just interesting to kind of keep in mind, this is where this person is coming from a VC backed space, from a Fortune 500 space, and try to figure out what can you learn from that, and what should you say, cool, that works for them. My situation's different.
I love that. I think you have, and that's such a great way to put it. You have to like silo the advice or the people, like knowing your audience. First of all, that's an art, I'm realizing, for a lot of people that's challenging. like they just don't necessarily know their audience that they're talking to, right?
Yep.
So you have to be able to, as the receiver of this advice and stuff, be able to have that conversation and then figure out, okay, now what do I do with this? Is this an actionable thing? Is this a 5-year from now thing? Is this this will never apply to me because it's just not relevant to me? And that is important, because I think that again, my tendency is like, oh, I want to find what's working for everybody. I want to take all this and I'm going to apply it to myself, and it just doesn't work that way. You're going to get overwhelmed.
And to add to that a little bit, I think one slightly overlooked part of that is also just figuring out, what do you want out of this? Like, what do you want out of the company? So there was a pivotal moment at one point where I said, I see what would make most sense for CocoaPress. I see it very clearly. It is so not what I want to do. And that was actually really difficult. That was a really hard thing, where one of the people advising me at the time was like, what are you doing? You need to be doing that thing.
Yeah.
That's not the company I want.
Yeah.
That's not what I want to do with my time and my life. And so that's something that I've really struggled with, is trying to reconcile those things and trying to figure out, like, if this will hurt CocoaPress, like, can I redefine what success is? Is success monetary specifically? Is it growing specifically? Is it being that, like, hockey stick startup? And over time, my answer has shifted to no, it's not. I'm okay saying no to these things and saying I'm capping, how many printers I'm going to sell.
Yeah.
Watch out for my tweet later today. But yeah, it's been an adjustment. I think that part was really overlooked, specifically in the VC backed spaces that I was getting a lot of advice from.
Well,
sometimes success is just surviving too for long enough. Like I love that comment. Andrew, what were you gonna say?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was gonna say, we've talked about this on several occasions in previous podcasts. Is when it comes to defining what it is, like, we're all makers here and we want to turn it into a business. I think the first rule is sit down and plan out, what do you want out of your business? That is like number one, because without that plan or direction, you're just going to start going blindly into different directions, and you're going to end up lost and twisted around, and who knows what.
But Andrew,
happen,
that's one of the things that I don't want to do. Here's a question for both of you. Really quick.
Okay.
What percentage and I mean, this could even extend to life, but what percentage of the things that you have to do as a founder of a business on a day-to-day would you say you know that you have to do but you don't want to do, versus like
that's a good question.
Huh?
99%.
Like 99%, right? And so it's like, it's all about just like having enough ownership over yourself, and basically like, finding a right reward structure. Like, if you do your homework, then you get to play, right? So Ellie, what's what percentage breakdown, and then how do you make yourself do the things, which are many and myriad, that you don't want to do, get it done?
One thing I learned when I had more people working with me full time was that I was doing less and less of the things I enjoyed. And that's one reason that I have tried to specifically find people to do the things that I don't enjoy. So like Emma with support.
Yeah.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
It goes in and out of things, but a lot of times it's like 75% of the things I'm doing are not what I want to do.
Yeah. I would say same if not higher for me, but go ahead, Andrew.
So to kind of backtrack a little bit on why I think it's so critically important, and we've talked about this so many times before about coming up with that plan
Yeah.
of what you want on your business. Like one of the things that we did at Gloop, was as a part of a competition, for a grant, we had to, kind of describe our business, describe what it was that we were doing, what our, KPIs, key performance indicators, all of these things were. And it made us actually sit down and think like, okay, well, what do we value out of this business? What are we trying to get? Where are we trying to go? And then to further that, there was a secondary competition that we went into, that required us to actually build out a business plan, and that's what allowed us to identify all of those elements of the business that we really don't want to do.
Mhm.
But it made it in such a way where I think it kind of siloed all of these individual pieces, and we came up with processes.
Yeah.
Because by building a business plan, it's essentially a process of how you run your business. And in many cases, like I mentioned, like 99% of the stuff that I do, I hate doing
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Like I want to be in the lab, I want to be working on new formulations, I want to be, working on, whatever crazy idea that I've got for some spectacle at a show.
Yeah.
But I know that that's very limited. So again, it's about the process. How do we get from where we are now to where I'll eventually be able to do those things? And I know that every week I've got to go back and reconcile books. I've got to every couple of days I've got to go through and make sure all of the customers are taken care of, whatever it might be,
Yeah.
as part of the business.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that is very nice about the bootstrap founder like
Model.
community, like
Sure.
people who are doing it that way.
Yeah.
I feel like specifically in the VC community, that mentality is less prevalent. And I think it's
Yeah.
really hard to. It was hard for me to find other bootstrap hardware companies.
Mhm.
And, I was straight up told to my face by people I respected, it will never work if you don't try to do a VC, don't try to get VC funding.
Oh my, oh my, oh
boy.
my. You know what that sound means? We have a caller. Are you ready, Ellie, to take your first call?
Sure.
All right. Let's see if we can't patch
Anonymous caller.
Patch them in. Hold on. I gotta make sure I've let's see here. We need to unmute. All right.
Long time listener, first time caller?
Yeah. Greetings, caller. Are you able to hear us, first of all?
I'm totally able to hear you. Can you hear me?
The system works. I know this voice.
What? That's crazy.
But
did you do a business plan on this?
We should. Well, listen, for those that don't recognize this voice or don't see the actual title on their screen of who it is, whom are we speaking to here?
The Dreadmaker Roberts.
The Dreadmaker Roberts
or
is calling.
Ben Eady. How about that?
Yeah,
more people know me by my real name.
Thanks for calling. You have you do have a question or a comment for Miss Ellie or for either of us today?
Well, all of you in general, because this one kind of digs at me right now, because like I'm so being the artistic type, right? The maker, I'm always flopping around doing all the fun stuff, right?
Sure.
And I have no business plan. I have no plan for anything. Yet somehow I still seem to find, like, I work in movies, right? So what ends up happening optimal for me is they hire me and they tell me to do something impossible, and I build it, and I get to be in my space, right?
Yeah.
But I'm finding more and more that I want to expand and I want to grow.
Yeah.
But as I grow, I realize that I have zero business aptitude and ADHD or mental issues. I don't know what it is, but I can't put all of this together. And I've always thought that, like, is there any systems out there or people out there? Like I've been wanting to find somebody going like, look, I've got a million ideas that are probably worth a little bit of money. In fact, I know they're worth a lot of money.
Right.
I just can't affect a business plan. So how about this? I'll make us both rich, but I'm going to give you ideas and then you got to run with it. Now, is that like
guy.
pie in the sky or is that not?
Yeah. Well, everybody wants to be the idea guy, right? I mean, let's be or gal.
Yeah.
Let's be honest with that. Andrew, why don't you take a swing at this one first? Because I know you've got thoughts.
So yeah, I think, so I'm going to quote Jim Collins here a little bit because I love that man.
Get ready,
and
Ben.
all of the books that he writes. you know, um in many cases, right, I think we as makers, or these artistic types of individuals, we have all of these crazy ideas that we want to go and pursue, and we could see exactly how they fit in. And in some cases, some people have been successful at doing exactly what you were mentioning, Ben, is finding a partner to basically, be the genius with 1,000 helpers,
Right.
and basically have these ideas and come up with it and then turn it into a business. Unfortunately, in many cases, Jim goes on in his books to kind of basically break down why those companies aren't really built to last. Because unfortunately, what happens when the genius dies, or if something happens, is the whole structured organization unfortunately falls apart. But that's not to say that it's not a sustainable business model. What I think he argues is like, if you as this individual, this genius, can start to basically I understand where you are lacking and find the right people to get on the bus to help you, not in the sense of having 1,000 helpers, but finding a partner in a way which understands the business and complements your skill sets. You can kind of transcend this leadership organization, if you will, that he kind of calls these level 5 leaders, being able to look for the right individuals and right people. And I know that it's not like an answer that you're probably looking for or anything else, but I think in many cases it comes down to trying to identify who might be that right individual. So spend some time thinking through the things that you don't do very well, and like kind of documenting the things that you do very well, and then start writing out a little bit of a plan. I know it's a grind, but of some of these ideas that you may have that you think can come to market, but you just don't know how to make that happen. And I think that might help facilitate conversations with other individuals in these other areas to help.
That's interesting. Now, Ellie, you actually jumped in, and we kind of talked about this earlier, which is probably what inspired Ben and this. That especially as a younger individual that doesn't have as much experience, like it sounds like you've done a pretty good job of like trying to find resources where you can, basically leverage other people's experience. Like, do you have any thoughts on where Ben might find some resources to do that, or is it like Andrew's saying, where it's just like you're going to have to vet these individuals, and it's really the quality of that partnership. If you're weak on the business stuff, you're going to have to look for a while to find that person, and it's more compounded if you don't have funding, if you don't have money to throw at the problem, which oftentimes as bootstrappers we don't, right? You're really going to have to sell yourself and sell your vision in a different way to this individual, because they're going to have to be putting in a lot more sweat equity instead of getting just money for their work. What do you think, Ellie?
I'm not sure. I think in a lot of ways, I got really lucky with being able to work on CocoaPress for 4 years and have a lot of university resources when I was starting.
Yeah.
Including access to labs and professors and funding too, because certain classes come with budgets. I think Andrew had good thoughts on just like what do you do well, and what do you need help with, and being really honest about that, and being really honest about what you think you can learn, and anyone can learn anything, but what you're just not interested in learning, or what might be a really high barrier to learn, or be really bad if you mess up right away.
Yeah.
That's all that's great. I just a side note, I want to say that like all three of you, I've watched the growth and like where all the trajectories all three of you have been on. And I'll be completely honest, I'm jealous as hell, because I cannot for the life of me do that. And I've tried many times, and I just don't feel like I've ever achieved I've achieved success, but not sustainable success, I guess would be the big one. But anyways, it's all very good input, and I very much appreciate that.
Yeah. No, thanks for the compliment. But I got to say, I think we're all victims of, the imposter syndrome and stuff that's out there. It's like, I think a lot of people look at what you're outwardly showing, and you get the people that you get to work with and that you're involved. Everybody has a different lived experience. I think the only thing I would take away, Ben, is like, I wish there were more resources exactly like you. And I am always on the lookout for that stuff. So to me, it's never, there's never a definitive answer. I really, this is why I do invest as much as I do in networking, in going to events, because it's to me, it's not it's the you'll know it when you see it kind of thing. Like you'll know it when you come across the right person or the right group that complements what you need at that moment in time. And that's the big caveat asterisk as well too. Like you're gonna ebb and flow in terms of where your energy is and what idea you think is the best and worth pursuing. So until you can distill that down, like if you can be focused enough, and I struggle with it, and I think a lot of I think I'm cut from a similar cloth as Ben, where it's like I want to do all the things, and I want to like, these are great ideas. There's a million great ideas. There's never a shortage of good ideas. It's that, can I get laser focused enough to actually execute on something for a period of time to effectiveness? And sometimes it doesn't work. I've just learned over time that it's like, I'm going to try a bunch of things. And sometimes the strategy is just allowing yourself the space to do that, and then just to pivot on to the next thing, right? That's not as easy to do in business, where it's like, well, do I need to throw a bunch of money in this? Because then you start to feel pot committed to it, and then maybe you hold on too long. So you need to, I think, get in your mind of like, what are you trying to be? Are you trying to incubate some ideas? Are you throwing the feelers out there? The Tim Ferriss model, where it's just like, let me just like throw ideas out there and see what the universe is given back to me, and then decide if I want to level up, or am I more in like the Jim Collins, like, or Andrew, like a planner? I think, as my gut's telling me, you're less of like the ability to sit down and just like try to focus on one thing, and more you need to put those feelers out, and then you'll know it when the thing that feels right, and the person or the people that complement you, you'll know it when you see it, right? I don't know. Is that helpful at all?
Well,
it is.
Okay.
I was just thinking, like, on a side note. Now I'll leave it at this. I don't want to hijack the thought.
This is all good stuff.
This is great conversation.
I've always seen things like, I've got friends that are venture capitalists. And the thing is that if you join a venture capital, you think that they're going to be there to help you out, and they want to throw money at something and have you solve all the problems. So this doesn't help a situation, especially on a business side of things. I think there's a lot of nerds out there, like, the nerd that likes spreadsheets. I know they're few and far between, but that person, if they could set up a sort of plug and play maker business ethos, or something to help somebody work their way through it, and say, take 40, 50, 60% of whatever is being done for their services, but just do nothing but find nerds that are making cool shit and develop a product and get it out to market. I think that person, if they're listening, please, for the love of God, do that, because I will be your first customer. Right.
So
and
what
I will
Ben's
do
saying is he
anything.
needs somebody that's a freak in the sheets, basically. They're good with the worksheets.
Don't Google that.
Yeah.
That reminds me of the podcast Startup by Gimlet Media.
Yeah.
Incredible podcast. If you haven't heard it, it is the story of starting Gimlet Media, and because he did radio, he recorded all of the conversations.
Yeah.
And I was so jealous, because he had the idea, he had the podcast experience, and he found someone who was incredible at the spreadsheets. So it just reminds me a lot of that story, and that's honestly one of my all-time favorite podcasts.
Yeah,
Ben, fantastic. You're absolutely right. There is a massive resource for the right person that can figure out how to containerize this thing. I think that's such a challenge, and especially for makers in general. Like, we all want to, like, we've got the good ideas, but that's part of the reason we started this podcast. Was it's like, there are not a lot of resources, and it is inherently against the maker mentality a lot of times to have to do the painful things that are required to actually turn it into a sustainable business. Thank you so much for your call, my friend. I wish you all the best, and I know you got Calgary Maker Fair. I'm gonna just quick plug for you. That's coming up this weekend. Right? And you're gonna be hosting some of it. You're gonna be doing some speaking and some panels.
I got a panel on both Saturday and Sunday. First panel is actually with Joseph Perosa. Is it Joseph or Joseph? I'm trying to make sure that I
call him
right.
Joe. I think technically it's probably, but I don't want to botch the Czech pronunciation. You could just call him Joe. He'd be fine with that. It's gonna be a big just bunch of fun, man. I wish we could have been up there for that, but all the best with that. And thanks for calling, man. We'll connect again soon.
You bet.
What a
Okay.
guy. Yeah.
Thanks.
One other thing I'll add, although I know that he's dropping off there, is that he said something about sustainable success, and I've just been thinking about that for the past 10 minutes.
Sustainable.
And
yeah.
I don't think I've achieved that yet. I really don't. I mean, a month ago, I was very stressed about whether or not I would still be doing CocoaPress by the end of the year if 0 people bought this printer. Now I'm like, oh, wow, I can actually hire someone and start making more plans. And I've had a lot of failures too in what I've done. And I think a lot of it is storytelling. And I always go back and forth on that because I don't want to give the impression that everything's been rainbows and sunshine. But
did you say funshine or sunshine?
I said sunshine, but
because
honestly,
funshine is
sunshine.
fantastic.
Funshine,
you need to copyright that.
But anyways, I think a lot of it is the storytelling that we all just inherently do about our business, especially like the 3 of us that are all like have public-ish facing personas of being very happy and community oriented, and then we say, oh, we actually hate 75% of what we do.
Oh my god.
There's a lot of
the reason we use a green screen is because everything back here is on fire, right? And so it's like it allows us
you don't
to
want to see
you don't want to see how the sausage is made.
But 100%.
This is the thread, guys, that binds us all. Is I think it's a general entrepreneur thing. Like, I don't think you realize like how much that everyone can be on the precipice of failure or mental breakdown or some combination of the both. And what allows us to succeed is just the fact that we'll take our licks and we'll get up and we'll keep doing it again the next day. And as long as you keep at it and survive long enough to be successful, that is really seems to be what it's about. Is my perception.
Plug a previous episode, where essentially we make our own luck by, again, coming back up and continuing to do the same thing again and again and again, as what Pooch was just saying, long enough to see a successful outcome. I mean, I know here, like, go ahead.
Eat chocolate.
If all
that's what I do.
So listen,
that is why I've been successful.
That is a fantastic segue.
Of chocolate in my office, and whenever I'm sad, I go into my box of chocolate. I'm just like,
there you
why
go.
would this person say no to me?
Okay, look, we've gone almost an hour already, and we haven't even talked about the chocolate, right? So all these great people in the chat. First of all, shout out to all my fantastic people in the chat. I am sorry, I've not been ignoring you. We've been trying to feed questions in as we go, but crazy frantic that this experience always is. We have to. So first of all, Ellie, I know we tend to go an hour, but I say we tend to go an hour. The truth is we always go long. I just want to make sure we have a time check for you. Are you okay on time? Because we want to be respectful of people's time. Let's talk about the chocolate, because that is one of the raddest things about your product and what you're doing and all the things that you've learned. Now, you're in an interesting space as a maker, as a fabricator, as a culinary arts individual even. You have a product, I would argue, without parallel. I mean, I know there are other machines out there that can do cake frosting and some other stuff, but I don't think I've seen a kind of a commercial offering that's really quite there yet. So first of all, can you talk about what that ecosystem looks like in terms of robotic food printing, and then let's get in on the chocolate.
Quick side.
Yes.
A 12-year-old called me a techno chocolatier this week.
Oh,
and I think that is the biggest compliment I've ever gotten.
12-year-old came up with that?
Can't lie.
Wow, a techno chocolatier? You better. Yeah, that's a great.
You better coin that term and
She included it in her science fair, which is about 3D chocolate printing. One of the people to inspire me a lot recently. But your actual question.
Yeah.
I'm what did you say? Sorry.
I throw a lot of stuff out there. So I just wanted to give people a basis of what is the state of the culinary or the food-based robotic manufacturing tools that exist out there today that are not just purpose built in a large factory at Hershey. I'm talking about is there anybody else that does what you do right now for chocolate or for food in general?
Yes. The answer is yes. I'm not the only one doing 3D chocolate printing. I'm not the only one doing 3D food printing. In the US, I am the only one doing 3D chocolate printing. There are 2 other food printing companies. There's what's their new name? I'm always worried I'm gonna like dead name a company. It's
I
like,
don't.
it should not be a worry. But
Yeah.
I think their name is Current 3D.
Okay. A what 3D?
Current
Current
3D.
3D. Okay.
Sugar Labs
Okay.
is, I think, maybe an associated or an old brand,
Mhm.
and they do sugar printing, full color sugar printing, really cool stuff. And then there's also BHEX, which is known as the NASA pizza printer, but they actually do cake frosting now and
Okay.
cookie frosting.
Okay.
In the so then I'm the
Oh,
only
and Pancake Bot. We're getting people shouting at us.
Yep.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think they're.
So
yeah.
in outside the US, there's Pancake Bot, which is
Uh-huh.
Miguel from Norway.
Yep.
There is there's a food printing company in the Netherlands, Biflow, and they have so many ingredients. They're focused at like high-end chefs. It's really cool. I'm friends with them. They did announce a chocolate printer about a year and a half ago, and I haven't heard any more details about it. So I don't really know.
Okay.
It looks really cool. And then looks like way on the higher end of what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple other companies in there. I really like Chocolate Cubes too. I've like referred customers to them in the past. I'm like, I'm not selling the chocolate printer, but if you're gonna buy one, go buy Chocolate Cubes. And then there's of course Lucky Bot, which a lot of people know because it's the few $100 extruder that you can add on to an ender, and
it'll
attempt to make
put metal in your chocolate.
I didn't say it.
Yeah.
I am close to. I hope they don't hear this. I am close to most chocolate printing companies except for them. They're the ones who like to steal my content and everything else. All the other food printing companies, I know most of them, and they're all amazing people. It's a small community, and we're not competing with each other. We're competing with the status quo, right? Like, I don't see.
That's an interesting way to put it.
Yeah, I don't see the, Chocolate Cubed is probably making the most similar printer to me. We would have hours-long Zoom conversations where we both were like, "How do we remove all of the air bubbles from this?" Like, it's really cool.
That's awesome. That's really awesome to hear. There was a great tweet yesterday by a guy that I follow that's in the indie hacker space named Arvid. I think his last name is Krull, but he said like the mentality of it's not zero sum. It's if when I win, we win, or when you win, we all win, and I love that you have that mentality that I think is so important. Not everybody shares it. And you're in a subset of 3D printing that's in like food production 3D print. So now we're talking like niche of niche, but I think that especially as you're getting started, when you're a bootstrap, you're looking for your contemporaries, you're looking for all the other stuff, like to find people that you don't feel threatened by, but that you're happy to work with and innovate together, and realize that a rising tide lifts all benches, as I like to say, is such a better strategy for, I think, a win than to try to me, my. I don't know what you feel.
And again, going back to the phone call a minute ago.
Yeah.
That is what I say publicly, but sometimes I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous of that press. Like, how did that this one company, chocolate printing company that doesn't exist anymore, get Neil deGrasse Tyson to show off the printer on TV? I have no idea how that came about.
Do you want me to text Neil right now for you? I'll tell him.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, give me the backstory.
Networking. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
There is definitely some of that panic, but I'm starting to see the other end of it, where one of my favorite stories from Armor was a couple who came in and said, we came to this event just to see you. We were Googling for 3D chocolate printers about 3 or 4 weeks ago, and we saw you were going to be at a conference 2 hours away from us. And they'd already pre-ordered a printer, so I knew they were really serious.
Yeah.
And we just talked about their concept for this store they're hoping to open. And now I've been working with them on some other stuff too, which is really cool. They would not have known to Google 3D chocolate printing if it weren't for all of the other companies doing 3D chocolate printing. If it weren't for Hershey trying it in 2014, 2015, if it weren't for maybe Neil deGrasse Tyson getting, I literally can't remember the name of the company, on TV. And, I am sure that they did not hear about it first through me.
Right.
But I happen to be the one going to a conference 2 hours away from them. And they're wonderful people. So it is kind of one of those real world examples that just happened in the last month of
That's awesome.
whatever quote you said, rising tides lift all benches.
Rising
That's
tides.
it.
Yep.
Rising tide lifts all benches. So this brings up another interesting point, and I've talked to Andrew about this. Is like when we have what is zero sum in our world is the amount of time and amount of money that we've got in this thing, and so as a growing business, you always have to be selling, you always have to be marketing, you have to put your time into being out in front of people, and those connections to get in front of the Joels or the Neil deGrasse Tysons or whomever, that's very, that kind of stuff, when you can get to the level where you can get in front of people that are that influential, can create explosive growth, right? But that is not an easy thing to do. And so there are those things that we have to invest time in that are, I don't know, a long tail or like, a long-term effort. And then you can't be doing that at the sake of making sure the flywheel is still turning. You're still selling, you still have revenue coming in and whatnot. I know what's awesome about your business structure, I can see just outside looking in, is because it's pretty niche, you have the potential to have a lock on the consumable side of this and a massive revenue stream in just, even if you decide that you're not going to keep going with we haven't even gotten into the printer build and stuff like that, but like you could build an empire of just creating a good piece of material to be used in these things, creating the standard. You've done a lot of work on the material science side, which is not the side that gets talked about a lot. It's not the sexy, glamorous
I see
piece.
Andrew being excited about this.
But it is so critical, and it could be a monster just selling Choco cartridges by itself. Never mind the printer. And so you are. I see the genius in the vision. Like, you are potentially diversified across a number of revenue streams. That said, you're still pretty. Would you call yourself pre-revenue? I mean, you've had to invest a lot of time and energy and stuff like that, but it's like the printers have been out not in the current form, but you have sold some printers. You have done you have sold actual, like, I know you'll tell me that you're doing like 100 or 500 chocolate printed things where you'll sell so chocolate print services is another thing that you do, right? Where are you in terms of like the revenue streams, and how does that all come together?
I think there's a rule that I probably heard about in some podcast. I listen to a lot of podcasts.
Podcasting is great.
Like 80-20 rules of I think of it in terms of what I do. What I talk about 80% of the time is actually 20% of my revenue. I actually also sell molded chocolates. So I have a maker multiplier. I make custom molds, and I've done, 1,000-piece runs, 1,500-piece runs of custom chocolate bars.
Yeah.
And it's great because everything that I do to make money, I try to make sure that it also relates back to my goals, longer term goals in terms of selling the hardware.
Yeah.
And for that, it's great because I can see, where does 3D printing the chocolate actually make sense? And where does molding chocolate actually make sense?
Yep.
But I will admit that most of the money I've made has actually come from molded chocolate and not 3D printed chocolate.
Still on brand, but I think that I don't think a lot of people see and hear that component of what you do as much, as I know we have been offline.
Quite as much, but I'm still using 3D printing. I'm still figuring out how to 3D print the molds easily, and that's why I was so excited about the Maker multiplier. But that's a whole other story.
It's an awesome machine. Yeah.
I don't know where I would call myself in terms of pre-revenue something. I've had profitable months. I've had not profitable months. Chocolate in general goes through. Is very seasonal, of course. And so over the summer, I will not make very much money because shipping chocolate is really hard. And it gives me a lot of time to really focus on the material of the chocolate or the hardware or something else. And then come November, December, I am ignoring the printer. I am doing everything else.
We're getting chocolate out. I call
didn't even-
these the high chocolate holidays. So there's
Mhm.
you know, there's this is a little aside, and I didn't mean to cut you off, but it
No,
is
you're good.
so interesting, the seasonal demand. This is a whole nother, thing.
Mhm.
First of all, everybody in the chat, you need to eat more summertime chocolate. So support your local
Yep.
techno chocolatier and eat more chocolate in the summer, please.
Thank you, Chloe, for that name.
There is a little like trailer that is just down the street, like next to a convenience store. You would drive past, you'd never notice it. The local Lions group, uh, around the high chocolate holidays every year, put a little folder sign out, and they sell C's chocolate out of this trailer. And it is the weirdest thing because it's like only open like, I don't know, 10 days in total across, they'll open a little bit before Easter, a little bit before, Mother's Day sometimes, but not always. But you're right. Like you're in an interesting business where some of your product can be very seasonally demand driven. But again, it sounds like you're kind of diversified pretty well across a lot of that stuff. And you recognize that it allows you a nice little workflow where it's like, okay, we got crunch time where we got to just like, let's make some money. And now we've
Mhm.
hopefully built up the coffers and we can work on some other aspect of the business. So I love that. I love that.
Yeah, definitely. I say it's one of the challenges of working with customer service and not doing it all myself now, because they're like, so when do you say yes to these orders and when do you say no to them? And I'm like, it depends how busy I am. Like,
Depends if I
tag me in it.
feel
I
like
don't
it
know.
or not. Yeah.
Yeah.
So okay, so let's talk about the printer itself now. I know you said like you've got a good diversification of revenue and all this stuff. You've decided, and I do not envy you here. I will be honest. Like I have seen what it takes to support a printer. I have never done a Kickstarter. I've never done like we've kind of pre-sold a few things here and there. But when it comes to actually building and supporting a 3D printer, unfortunately, and I don't say this to discourage. I want this to be what it is. The carnage of, or the battlefield is rife with just dead bodies in the U.S. In terms of like failed printers, just because we've become so accustomed to just like cheap components and cheap machines coming out of China. That said, they don't have anywhere near the amount of IP and understanding around the technical aspects of what it takes to do a chocolate printer, which isn't to say that you're not in threat of being cloned. You almost definitely are. But
I spent weeks thinking about that.
I'm
exactly
sure.
how I would deal with it when it inevitably happens.
It will inevitably happen.
For sure.
Are you viewing the printer like what is your, in terms of how it fits into the overall business portfolio for you? There's obviously a lot of teachings to be had, a lot of learning to be had from like doing the printer and stuff like that. But how are you feeling about building out the whole printer development sales component of it? Because that is a very potentially capital and time intensive operation.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
That's your question. I think I'm working on selling hardware because that's what I've always been interested in. It's not necessarily, like I said earlier, not because it makes the most sense financially. If I wanted to grow CocoaPress the fastest I could, I would be a chocolate shop. That's not what I'm interested in doing. I really want to sell the hardware. I really want to get other people using it. I really want to get other people printing with it. So one thing I'm doing is I'm staying small on purpose. I said I'm at this point almost 3 times past my minimum goal for the printer in terms of sales.
That's great. Congrats.
It's incredible. Like, if you had told me that this is where I would be sitting, when I launched this thing 3 weeks ago?
Yeah.
This is past I passed my stretch goal for where I was hoping to be by the end of June.
I know you don't want to say specific numbers, but can we say we're in the hundreds at least or something like that? Yeah. Okay. So just you've got a lot of work ahead of you in terms of like now getting these kit, and it's going to be a kit, right? So you're You're gonna have to have the build guide, the packaging, test, make sure that it's shipping, and then the customer support structure. So
For sure.
good luck to your support team.
Thanks, Emma.
Yeah.
Please help.
Go, Emma.
And it's not just Emma there, but
I know. Yeah, and Ellis, yes,
and Alice and they
and their team.
Well, I don't know if it's public or not, but
Yeah.
anyway. Oh, I had another point associated with that. Oh, just that I've gotten to this point, and it is so tempting for me at this point to say, wow, I'm starting to figure out what works with selling things. I'm starting to figure out how people are finding me. I'm starting to figure out, like, I've had a lot of theories based on whatever I've done before to, be like, oh, a successful, KPI, whatever you want to call it, is if someone goes to this page, if someone signs up for the email list, we used to do a lot of one-on-one meetings with chocolate shops, and just figuring out kind of where people are in that sales funnel. But there's something about saying, they've given me $100. It's not the full printer. I don't know what that conversion rate will be from the $100 to the full printer. But I am much more confident if someone has given me $100 and their address that they're genuinely interested.
Yes.
So what I've been able to start doing is saying, I am reaching where I think I want, or even past where I want to be. I'm starting to think about caps for the first batch. I was going to go to Open Sauce. My reward for myself, partially from seeing you two at Armorf, is I'm going around and I'm not going to have a booth at Open Sauce. I'm just going to go hang out, because my buddies Pooch and Andrew looked like they're having a blast at Armorf, not having a booth. And I was having a blast too. The whole time.
Well, it doesn't work every time, to be fair, but yes, it is very freeing to be.
But I think what I'm trying to do to manage my sanity is just say, I know what I can handle. I'm a little bit past where I thought I was going to be.
Yeah.
Let me not try to keep going to infinity here. Let me slow things down, which is so hard to
not
do.
To infinity and beyond.
Finally.
Yeah.
Is to slow things down.
Put the guardrails on. I like that.
I think that's going to help, though, with building all of that stuff up, because LDO, they can pump out kits. If I said I want to double the number of kits for my first order, Jason would be like, great, got it. We're
They're
good.
The best. I know.
But like you said, I'm actually most worried about supporting it. I'm most worried about what happens if, these two screws are actually really hard to get in place.
Right.
And obviously betas are going to help with that, but there will be things.
Yeah.
We've seen it with every printer. We've seen it from Bamboo to Prusa to Creality. They
Nobody's
all have
immune
issues when they come out. So obviously I'm trying to avoid that, but
and you will, and somebody's going to throw shade. Somebody's going to get it. Somebody's going to be like, and that is just the sooner that you can accept as a founder, as an owner, that there will be problems and that there will be jerks online, to, and you just have to be like, okay, fine. That is, rise above it. That was really hard for me. I took negative feedback really personally. I mean, most of the time I was able to turn that around and make it into a positive experience. But when you're in the trenches of that can be really stressful, especially because you're in the middle of the launch, you're not sleeping, you're stressed, all that stuff. And the last thing you need is somebody just like somebody stabbing you while you're like already, kicking you while you're already feeling down. So that's where the resilience really lies. Like, just get to tomorrow, really. Like, keep getting to tomorrow. But
so I'm very scared to ship this thing. I'm very excited, but I'm very scared to ship it.
It's gonna be great. Well, first of all, you have to realize too that so many of the people that are supporting you are in friendly waters. There are a number of people that realize like this is this is a cost of being on the bleeding edge. Like I was happy to do it. I'm excited, and I would have done it if for no other reason than just to help support you getting this thing off of the ground. I mean, I don't need another printer. I don't have a chocolate printer yet, and I have a spot carved out in my kitchen for when it's eventually here. But I fully understand how this process goes, and that there will be delays, and that there'll be sourcing issues, and all sorts of other stuff, and that's fine. But you're not lucky enough, unfortunately, to have me and everybody that way. But a good amount of the people that are early adopters, like I said, are warm waters. And I think that's a good way to start. You were really smart about who you partnered with right off the bat. I wish I had found Jason and LDO a long time ago, because they do a lot of stuff for us as well. And they're one of the few Chinese manufacturers that I feel like get it in the sense that they understand the community that exists here, the importance of taking feedback, and like just not being another just crank out machines and never support it and all that kind of thing, entity, without naming names and getting specific. So good on you. You're in a good spot, but obviously there's a long way to go. We've had some comments. Andrew was mentioning in the post, Andrew Sink, shout out Andrew Sink. Love you, buddy. Loves the deposit
printer. He bought the first one.
I was so
he bought it before I sent out the email, literally within like a minute.
He was sitting there refreshing the page.
He probably was on an
number
airplane
one.
and bought Wi-Fi on the plane specifically so he could continue refreshing the page. And just to be clear, I did not even know what time I was launching the printer. I had friends over that weekend, and I woke up and like ate some breakfast.
Yeah.
And then was like, okay, I should probably figure out how to launch this thing now. Like, it was not timed. I did not have this like. So for him to have bought it within like a minute, it wasn't like I said it's going live at noon and he got on at noon.
Yeah.
No, I said it will be at some point during the day, depending on when I.
You probably programmed like a little bot that was scraping your website. Just wait till and then sent him an alert.
I would not put it past him. I would not put it past him.
Anyway, he says he likes the deposit idea to gauge interest. And shout out to you. Like, I know everybody does Kickstarters this day and age. Like, I am so fed up with Kickstarter. I know you guys know how I feel about it. I understand that it's got marketing juice and all kinds of other stuff, but I'm with Andrew on this. I think that there's no reason you can't do it on your own site. I think your strategy, just like, let's make sure that people are serious, but not stress them out that I have like all of their money now without knowing when they're ever going to get this thing. So you've got some funds to help you get going. And I think it's a good in between. What kind of considerations were you given when you came up with that strategy? Did you think about doing a Kickstarter, which is fine if you did?
For sure. I considered doing a Kickstarter. I considered just buying a certain number of printers if I could fund it, and saying, hey, it's available today, by the way. Because, I mean, mic drops are fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, what? Here it is.
Yep, exactly. I mean, kind of like Prusa MK4, except that we all kind of knew some of that tech was already in the works.
I know. Everybody said they were surprised. I'm like, yeah, but they've been talking about this. But anyway, go ahead. Yes.
Yeah. So I considered all the options. I think what really appealed to me about this plan was it wasn't a Kickstarter. I agree. I don't like Kickstarters. Why would I do something that I don't like?
Right.
I've been burned by Kickstarters. Haven't we all been? Especially in the 3D printing.
It's a rite of passage.
Yep.
Space.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make sure that if anything went wrong, that it was on me. That I was not going to say, sorry, I screwed up. All of you now lost your, $14.99.
Yeah.
I really wanted to make sure it was like, no, if something goes wrong, that's on me. I'm taking all of the risk here.
Yeah.
Because I think that's how it should be.
I
also don't think that what I'm doing is possible for everyone, to be very clear. Like, I really think that I had some things, especially like the relatively low quantities that I'm working with, that make it possible to do what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Specifically, I don't think other small companies can do what I'm doing. I think maybe the big ones, there's something to be said for it. They could probably fund it.
Yeah.
And then it went through a lot of different iterations. So at first, it was actually just going to be a survey where I was going to be like, hey, like, what do you want a chocolate printer for? What do you want to use it for? And great, you're now on the list to be the first to get it. And I was like, I'm going to get a lot of people saying they want it. And then it was like, okay, maybe I'll do a survey. And then if you kind of answer all the questions correctly, it'll be like, oh yeah, you can now put $50 or $100 down on the printer. I was like, I'm not going to make this a game.
Well, and you don't want to create barriers to entry. You don't want to make it like, I'm not going to do that because I don't want to deal with that. But go ahead.
Honestly, it was because this is the most absurd launch story I've ever had. Okay.
We love absurd.
I was at a first robotics event because I mentor a high school robotics team.
Yep.
That Saturday, somehow on Twitter, a lot of transphobes found me. And so people were just being really nasty who I did not know. I was just like, for some reason, I was getting caught up in it because I was sitting in the stands with a lot of downtime and just being stupid on Twitter because who amongst us hasn't been stupid on Twitter? Trying to get better.
80% of my
then
day
the next
is
day,
being stupid on Twitter. Not really.
What'd you say?
I said like 80% of my day is being stupid on Twitter.
Yeah, for sure.
But it brings me joy, damn it.
And then
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
the next day, I was like, wow, I want people to be nice to me on Twitter. And so I was like, screw it. I'm gonna announce when I'm launching this thing because I had already picked the day. Like I already had it all set up, right?
Yeah.
And so I just announced it. It went viral.
Yeah.
And that is when I totally unintentionally. That is when Tom's Hardware picked it up, Gizmodo picked it up, All 3DP picked it up. And I'm now sitting in the stands at a robotics event responding to press inquiries. I didn't have my computer with me. I was just like on my phone doing all of this.
Yeah.
They're like, do you have a press release? I was like, no, not yet. And I'm not going to write this on my phone right now. So,
yeah.
And then I had to figure out how to actually launch it because originally it was just going to be basically a survey form, like a type form type of thing that let you pay at the end. And I was like, okay, let's actually use the Shopify I've set up. Let's go. I had finished my website 2 days before this announcement.
Yeah.
So, I'm flying by the seat of my pants is for some of it is the answer. Like there's a lot of thought that goes into it.
We're all flying by the seat of our pants.
For sure.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of thought that goes into it, but sometimes it's unexpected. You just have to roll with it. So that turned, because I got so much press that day, it made it turn into more of a I'm going for it. I'm not doing a survey. I'm just focusing on the DIY kit. I'm not going to ask who wants a fully assembled one. I am just focusing on this.
I love that.
And then
YOLO.
there was a service I was going to go with, and turns out there was a technical limitation. And they could not do it. They could do a 10% reservation fee, but couldn't do $100. And I was like, I'm sorry, I announced $100.
It's got to be.
I'm not doing $150 now. And so I had to like rework everything.
Oh wow!
In that week to figure out how to actually get it done. So there's always fun stories behind it.
But you did it.
Ultimately, it was because I wanted the risk to fall onto myself, but I wanted to know people were serious so that I could order enough parts. And that's how it kind of came about. So
Andrew, I'm gonna talk. So I there were so many nuggets about that I love that I want to focus on. So first of all, I've had debates and whatnot on a lot of this that like. I hate focus groups. I hate service. Like I'm more like you. Like I want to show that I'm serious. 2, I want to do business with people that are serious. And I always say there is no survey better than people voting with their hard-earned money. So
for sure.
So you know you can put out the best surveys and all this stuff, and everybody's gonna be, oh yeah, rainbow, yeah, that I totally want that. All of it, it's crap because at the end of the day, they're not gonna convert. You know.
And to add to that for a second, with the first version of the printer, I had really cool people we were talking to, and I had multiple people say, I am buying this today. I am sending this to you today. And that kept happening.
Yeah.
And they seemed really serious. It made sense for them. They were using it in a commercial standpoint that I could tell they would have $10,000 to spend on it.
Sure.
And then they never did. And this happened over and over again to the point where, like you said, if it's not in the bank account, I don't believe it.
I'll believe it when the order is in and I have the money in my hand. Because I understand stuff comes up. People are the road to hell is paved with good intentions, as they say, right? So and again, I understand there are plenty of serious people that are true to their word and all this stuff. I'm speaking in stereotypes and generalities and stuff like that. But when it comes to the things that you're basing your decisions that dictate whether you are going to be sustainable and survive as a business, you need to take the solid evidence. And there is nothing more solid than the people that are serious enough to commit the funds. So that said, it's not to say that doing surveys isn't good. Like you can do a focus group, but I would always say like you just got to take all of those things with a grain of salt. Getting feedback is good. I would much rather get feedback. And I know not everybody wants to be a beta tester, or you know, even we live in an era now where even like the big auto manufacturers are releasing things so quickly. I had a great conversation at I think it was Rapid. Who was telling us about No, it was at the Prusa user group. Somebody was telling me about their Ford Mach-E that they got, where they released the car and realized like a massive failing of like the charge port. When it opened, like it could be pushed open too far and actually dent the body panel. And so the 3D printing community came up with like a little clip that prevented it from opening. So historically, there's been a lot more testing and engineering that goes into all kinds of product development that we just don't see in this day and age, because there's such a hustle to get things out. And then they're like, we'll get the feedback and we'll fix it in the next rev.
Mhm.
So whether or not you're calling that a beta or not, there is like some element of people that are just having to beta test, but that is good real world feedback. There is no better feedback than that good real world feedback. It's just a question of, will your customers be willing to suffer through that with
Mhm.
you or not, right?
And one other thing I think I've seen a lot in the 3D printing space, and this is not calling out any specific company, is the line between beta testing and publicity machines are
Mm.
so narrow. And so that's another one
Yeah.
of those things that I was like, I'm doing a beta test, and it's going to be a quiet beta test
Mhm.
because it's not for publicity.
Right.
And then if I send out
Mhm.
machines for publicity,
Right.
that will be for publicity. And so I think
Mhm.
it's really learning from, there's so many examples of incredible companies with incredible machines that didn't ultimately work out.
Yeah.
And it's really trying to study those. And a lot of it, the stories are not public because there's a lot of tough feelings involved. There's a lot of like hard conversations and all of that. But it's like, my first printer was a Saladoodle press. That printer bankrupted Saladoodle.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I'm able to find some people who work there and be like, so what actually happened here? And
Yeah.
and there are some stories of that company publicly as well.
Yeah.
So it's really learning from all of these. The first 3D printing company I visited was Type A Machines in San Francisco.
Remember them? Yeah.
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 And so I was like, I'm connected with the COO of that company on LinkedIn. Like, he drove me to a train station once. Like, let's chat about it. So it's really learning from all of the failures, because unfortunately there are
Mhm.
so many.
There's
stories
no
in the
right or wrong answer here. Andrew, what do you think? Like, there's no right or wrong answer. Like, what you talked about is a strategy. Like, you
Mhm.
can do a beta test and you can do it publicly because you can get some
Yep.
marketing juice out of that too. That's not to say, that's a personal decision about how you want your brand and what but I
Oh,
don't know
sure.
that there's a right or
Mhm.
wrong answer there. We
Yeah.
each probably have our own opinion on how we would approach it. I don't know. What do you
Mhm.
think, Andrew?
Yeah, no, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, what's funny is 3D Gloop launched with a Kickstarter, and we did it, but it was a very intentional Kickstarter. We knew exactly how much it was going to cost to make the product, exactly how long it was going to take us. Like, we did a lot of due diligence and we delivered on time.
Yeah.
A lot of people with the Kickstarters, they're just like, oh, winging it. Or you have these giant companies that are using Kickstarter as a marketing platform, which,
Yes.
again, it's like, really. But in terms of the beta testing, in terms of either doing a quiet or a public one, then yeah, I think it kind of can go either way. We've done some public beta tests that got some people excited, but we've also done our fair share of quiet ones, where we've sent out unreleased product under NDA, very strict NDA even. So I think you could use it to your advantage in many different ways.
Yeah.
Totally.
Okay, we've done a solid 90 here. We're kind of running
Yeah.
pretty long. So
I'm
let's
good at talking.
Oh, this is not your fault. This is just what we do. Because we love the conversation and there's so many great little nuggets here. Let's start to try to wrap it all up. And honestly, we could go in on the kit building and all that stuff. I think you're going to find, and you didn't ask for this or whatever, but like, I want to know if you agree with it. I think you're going to find that the actual like fabrication and kitting of the parts and getting the kits together, like you've already probably started down that road. You have a good partner in LDO to help source a lot of that stuff. You have a great partner in the Voron team in terms of the design. If you guys aren't aware of the Voron project, if you just look at the documentation associated with any of those and know that this is an open source thing and this is all volunteer based, and I am jealous of this. Like, my documentation is crap compared to this stuff. Beautiful diagrams, all this stuff. It's amazing.
they're gonna do my assembly manual for me too. It's gonna be a
Oh,
Voron
How did you
dialogue.
how did you score that? That is like that's like $100,000 value right there. Potentially, it feels like
I
it.
just like literally shout out to the Voron team. They have made CocoaPress come true, and I try to credit them whenever I can. And they're like, nope, we're doing this for you. Like, you don't have to give us credit. This is your thing. And I'm like, seriously, like, you are making this work. Like, Max's hinge mechanism,
That breech loader is genius.
incredible.
Like,
It is
yeah,
so good.
yeah.
And it was not the first, second, third, or fourth design. I will just leave it there.
Yeah. So for those that haven't seen the machine, the cartridge that goes into these things, just really quick, it looks like a log of chocolate. We'll call it that. And it goes into a stainless steel tube, but it protrudes upward off the top of the printer pretty substantially. It looks like there's a good amount of mass on the print head of this thing. But as you'd mentioned, it has to load from the bottom based on your current design, right? You don't get to just slide it in from the top. And I'm sure there's many reasons for that. But in order to do that without having to cut a hole in the bottom and feed it up and stuff like that, you and the Voron team or whomever came up with this really clever tilt mechanism where you can unlock it. It tips forward so you can slide the Choco log in from the bottom and then reattach it. And it's such a cool mechanism. I forget, there's even a title for this type of mechanism, the locking component. I don't remember what it is. Kim in your booth was talking about it, I think at Remurf. So
I would trust her more than me to know.
yeah, well, that's why you surround yourself with smart people, and that's good. But anyway, shout out to the Voron team. You're doing fantastic work. I really can't wait to see how this continues to evolve. And then your feels in terms of like the work is going to be the long-term support, the assumptions that even with a beautiful build guide, there are always going to be people that are just like, wait, I don't get it. They're going to be asking like, can I just pay you more to assemble one and ship it? I'm sure you've already had people asking that.
Yep. And I have a price released for that. It's people then are like, oh, that's really expensive. And I'm like, yeah.
Because labor is expensive. And you know what? But again, that's, you need people that you start to learn over time. Andrew, you can speak to this too. It's like, you're going to get people complaining about price all the time. But if you're serious, there are plenty of people out there that are serious and willing to pay that. They're like, they realize that their time is worth more than they want to spend on the kit. And they're willing to pay a lot of money for a pre-assembled thing. And that can be a good model for you. And it takes away a lot of the customer support. A lot of times those customers are just happier because like they're immediately getting the thing and getting to use it, right? They don't go through the pitfalls of potentially like missing a step, especially with printers. This is such a fatal flaw, a potentially fatal flaw. Think about how many people never actually got into 3D printing because they might have missed one little step about wiring something or placing something just right. And they think that it's operational. They think they've done it right. A lot of times they're like, oh, I'm an engineer, so I know what I'm doing. And then they never get to a success. They never get the win. And then they give up.
You know how many screws I had to unscrew on my rep box because I put something in backwards? Multiple.
Yeah. Well, that's I know.
That's not a dig on you. That's 100% a dig on me.
But in a way, it is. I always look at that stuff as like, if we weren't clear enough about it, and there's been an evolution, and you're going to get tons of people that are like, why isn't there a printed manual? Why isn't there a video guide? Why isn't there an online interactive model? Because there is no one way that everybody wants to learn. And even if you did, you can spend millions of hours putting together all the perfect thing, and somebody will still miss something. Nothing is intuitive. Never dismiss people's ability to just completely not read directions or follow directions and then blame you for it. So
and that is what I did, except the blaming you for it part. I was like, oh, I know what this step is. Like, I see the pieces. No, the step was like circled bold.
IKEA has been a great disservice to me because I think a lot of people are like, I can put together IKEA furniture. Or how hard is this? It's a box. Or I put together my complex 3D printer. How hard is the storage box? You still have to pay attention. There are details, and you're going to run into that too. And there's a lot more details with what you're building. So Can
Mhm.
can as a last thing, can we didn't get to talk. I really wanted to talk about material science stuff. There was some really great stuff in Joel's video. We'll put a link in the description. Producer, let's make sure we put a link in the description to the video that Joel did with this, because you get into this a little bit. The what we're thinking about, just like melting chocolate and depositing it, I think it was a surprising revelation that there are no cooling fans. There are no part cooling fans, sorry, on your build. And you've relied heavily on your material science abilities to, one, create a bubble-free chocolate formulation that jellifies in a manner, am I using the right term? That jellifies creates a gel in a manner that cools almost as it's coming out of the nozzle adequately enough to get bridging and overhang, things that we have traditionally relied on in 3D printing part cooling fans to help assist with. So you've spent a lot of time on formulation. Can you speak to that for a second?
Yeah. A lot of this was Amy Coronado from who you were asking how I found people a while ago, and I never answered. But she found me because of a Mashable video, and she was scrolling on Twitter and happened to see a video and cold emailed and applied.
wow.
I hired her, and she became a really close friend. We still keep in contact, and B, just absolutely instrumental in a lot of CocoaPress's stuff, because she did material science. The reason she got into material science was because she was interested in chocolate. Then she moved on to Forum Labs because Forum Labs is a really cool place to work. It was an incredible opportunity for her.
Yeah.
So a lot of this was her. Everything I know about material science is from her. It's not my background. So Andrew, you can correct me if I'm wrong about things, because I know you know a lot about material science. But basically, yeah, we figured out we could do it without even a cooling fan, when in the last printer we had a fully enclosed, insulated, double pane argon filled glass door,
Come a long way from that.
system, full vapor compression cooling. It was
Mhm.
There is such good engineering in that old printer. Like, I'm like sad about how simple the printer is now.
Yeah.
But what we're doing, which you alluded to, is you put solid chocolate in, air bubble free chocolate core,
Yep.
and
Mhm.
heat it up to the lowest temperature that it will flow. It's more like a gel. If you kind of take it out, you can like hold one end of it, and the other end just kind of like, does this. It doesn't actually like
Yeah.
flow.
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
then we push on it with about 10 pounds of force. And because it's not even really flowing when it's in the cartridge,
Yeah.
it just kind of stays there and solidifies while you print the next 2 or 3 layers. If it doesn't solidify,
Mhm.
no. But as long as you can have that really, really precise temperature control, and we have 2 different zones of heating. I've done a lot of math on exactly what temperature sensors to do. We have some crazy Marlin hacks that are all, of
Yeah.
course, it's open source. It's on our GitHub, but
Yeah.
no one has found it yet. Go look if you're interested. And that has basically allowed us to take a lot of the mechanical complication of the machine and solve it with material science, which was not my first inclination. Like, I'm a mechanical engineer. My first inclination is, how can we build this in a more complicated way?
How can we
like, how can we
Yep.
over engineer it some more? Yeah.
Mhm.
And a lot of it ended up being, how can we chocolate crystallizes. It's a I forget all the names. I haven't talked to Amy in too long, obviously. It's like multiple things mixed together in a solution, but it's not
Mhm.
one material throughout.
It's
Heterogeneous, not homogeneous.
Oh,
I
I think we lost Pooch.
Lost me?
Anyway,
Lost you.
you probably know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
what fat it is based on will determine kind of how it crystallizes. So cocoa butter has crystal structures. You can heat it up to
Mhm.
melt all 5 crystal stages. I'm really speaking very poorly about this. And then you cool it back down, and you want specifically those beta 5 crystals. And that's when in chocolate you get like a nice snap, you get a nice shine,
Mhm.
and you don't get what's called chocolate bloom, which is Sorry, I'm watching the YouTube, and actually Andrew is
I
the
know
one
we
not
lost
on
Andrew's
there,
your video.
and
I
Pooch
think your
still
camera
is, but
dropped off. I can still hear him.
Okay.
talking.
That's an odd.
Restart your
I'm
camera.
on
Andrew.
there, so I'll keep talking.
Yeah,
Um,
I hear you.
So you get that crystal structure. You make sure that the chocolate doesn't bloom, which is when you get a white powdery finish on the outside of chocolate. It looks nasty sometimes, but it's totally edible. It's kind of like if you leave a chocolate bar in the car, you might like take the chocolate back. It still feels soft, even though it's technically back at room temperature. That means you probably got some beta 6 crystals growing in there.
Oh. Okay.
Anyway, point is, I'm very distracted by the cameras turning off and stuff. The point is, the material science is really cool in chocolate. We were able to use a palm oil as a base, which means it doesn't have to be tempered. And sorry, I'm throwing out a lot of terms. I would love to explain what each and everything means, but it's 1:45 my time. And so we use a palm oil, and then we still use the cocoa solid to make sure that it still has a really good taste. And so it's really trying to balance, how Hershey did the same thing. They made their printer through material science, but their chocolate tasted terrible from everyone I've heard. I never got to try it, but I've heard multiple people who were able to taste it. And so, but food science has come a long way in 8 years since they were working on it. Oh, now it's just me by myself. Hi, this is the Ellie Show now, with your host,
Keep going.
Ellie.
There we go. He's back.
And
just to say, no, we're here. We're here.
I don't know if this is edited later. I'm just gonna keep talking until someone tells me to stop.
Yeah, no. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties. You never know what you're gonna get.
Food science has come a really long way, and so we use a palm oil and make sure that's sustainably sourced with cocoa solids to make it still continue to taste good, and that works.
Well, that's
and it works really well, and I keep being surprised by the material.
I think the one takeaway that I want to get from this is
that's my 10-second spiel of what could definitely be a 2-hour conversation about material science and chocolate.
Definitely. I think the big takeaway that I have for this that it gives me.
Can you hear me, Andrew?
I think so.
You guys can't hear me now. Great. Well, this could be a good.
I've got Pooch over here, so there's some crazy technical difficulties going on. I can see Pooch. I think Pooch needs to relog in the back end, but
all right,
it's all good.
I'm gonna. I think we're gonna have to use
What's
this.
interesting is I'm watching YouTube, and all 3 of us are talking to each other.
Yeah.
Is it just replaying stuff?
I don't think so.
She
can't hear me,
Who
so
knows?
Andrew can hear me, but
anyways,
Ellie can't
it's
hear
probably
me.
time to wrap it up.
It is time to wrap it up.
Yes.
Andrew, how about this? Since she can
hear you, Pooch, I cannot.
Okay. So since Andrew, she can, both of us can hear you. Why don't you take us out today, so that she can hear?
Sure thing. So, Ellie, it's been fantastic talking with you. Thank you so much for all of the wisdom that you've been sharing. Everyone who's joined us here live, thank you for all of the questions and the comments you've were feeding us. Yeah, I think this was another great episode. I can't wait to see where you guys are heading. At CocoaPress, I think it's really cool what you're working on. Maybe we can have you back on and talk about some of the material science, because that's my jam. I can nerd out on all of the material science and technical details. But yeah, I think we both wish you the best, and we're excited to see where you go.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I guess I have to plug myself for something. So go to CocoaPress.com if you want to put down $100 and get a printer, a chocolate printer. It's very cool, I promise. And it's refundable if you decide you don't want it. Or follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Maybe I'll keep going on my YouTube channel at some point, at either CocoaPress or some combination of Ellie Rose 66 for now. And that's me. Thanks for having me on. This has been awesome. Obviously, I was listening to this podcast back on the days when it was on Twitter Spaces.
Oh, and, wow.
Yeah. Come a little ways.
Yeah. So that was what, 1.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So I
something like that. 50 something episodes in.
Yep. So I appreciate you all, and of course, just I really, really appreciate the 3D printing community. I'm just like seeing so many names in the chat. Like I just saw Allie popped in. She was the one who gave me the name Chocolate Core. I was like, what do I call this chocolate thing? And just people here who, Andrew, who was the first one to buy the printer, and David is there who just did, the video with Joel. So I just really appreciate everyone in the 3D printing community.
And
I don't even have enough words to say how much I appreciate everyone.
And we appreciate
but
you guys. It's been an awesome episode.
I'll try to give people chocolate to say thank you.
We will catch you next Friday on the next episode of Maker That Money. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon. Everybody have a great weekend.
Pooch is talking.
Bye-bye.
Yeah. See ya.